Hello. Welcome back to the next session on your writing and getting your writing up to speed on all different kinds of genres and things like that. Today, we're going to be looking at the post-apocalypse, one of my favourite settings to try and write and try and get things entertaining in. The post-apocalypse is something that has been in genres and different forms of entertainment for decades and decades. I would even vouch that the War of the Worlds is, which is very, very old, it is considered somewhat post-apocalyptic. It covers several different themes that I think are very, very important to a writer to get across, and they're an extremely fun space to try and weed a story out of. But I've titled this session "Welcome to the Wastes" because this is meant to be a introductory guide to how to go about creating a post-apocalyptic universe in which to put your stories, and it's an opinion piece, so not all of my opinions will be valid to you. Sometimes you'll be thinking about that I don't know what I'm talking about, or that I'm wrong. That's fine, but this channel is here to provoke discussion and to make sure that all you guys are getting better at writing, and you can only do that by discussing your ideas and critiquing them, and this is, in my opinion, what a post-apocalyptic setting is all about. So let's get started, shall we? Oh, and at the end of the session there will also be a little sneak preview of a setting that I am building, very not in depth. The setting is finished and I may do something about it a bit later on in another video, but yeah. So why does it work? Why does a post-apocalyptic setting work in the first place? Why do people come back to it? Why do people buy books and play games and watch movies that are based in such a world? Well, number one, it wipes the slate clean. A complete breakdown of social norms. Anyone who's seen things like The Walking Dead and things like that, they're very much like you can actually start to act. A lot of people in those series do act very, very, horrifically to other people because they can now. It's a might makes right system, and I find that a lot of people who like post-apocalyptic settings a lot tend to be from places or eras or times or companies even that in which you're very downtrodden or it's very mundane. It's a fantasy to break out of those social norms and go your own way for once. It lets you engage in a true power fantasy, and that power fantasy is putting down mobile phones, putting down modern trappings, and just going out there and being whoever you want to be. It lets you just, adjudicate who you want to be. It gives you complete autonomy over who you are. It's the one good thing about the post-apocalypse, really, is that it lets you do that. Number three is it allows you to see the world you live in through different eyes. So instead of walking down to the local store or going to the petrol station or gas station in America, going to the library, going to the university, going to your work, all of that's now decrepit and gone, and all the people from that place are pretty much dead as well. So it grounds you. It's one of the only settings and genres that can actually ground you in a place and say, look, this is how your place looks. You can't do that in Middle Earth. You can't even do that in things like Borderlands and other post-apocalyptic things like that. Only in post-apocalyptic settings that are based in our world can you say, this is your street, this is your house, this is what it looks like now. Yeah? And the fourth one is, it allows you to be you. And allows you to explore you. What kind of a person are you, really? If you're faced in a situation where you've got a zombie coming towards you, or you've got to step in front of somebody to take a bullet, would you? Post-apocalyptic settings allow you to think that way. They challenge you to say, how would you react to this? What would you do? That's always interesting. The concept of the fallen world. What is the fallen world? The fallen world is any post-apocalyptic setting, essentially. The fallen world allows you to see a civilization in decay. So it's a backward civilization. It's a civilization that was great. This isn't the autumn of the world. This is the winter. Okay, so not literally, or could be literally, but not literally in most cases in that you know, we've seen the summer. We're living through the summer now. Yeah, the autumn is the post-apocalyptic, you know, event of what happens, and the actual setting you're in is the winter. And so you should be seeing frozen skeletons of civilization, like skyscrapers torn to pieces and things like that. Number 2, normally it expresses devastation in its truest form and allows for some truly horrific scenarios. So, devastation doesn't just mean... The best post-apocalyptic settings don't just have devastation in the buildings, they have devastation in people. Like, people have broken down. When I say broken down, I don't mean Mad Max, even though I love Mad Max. But I don't necessarily mean Mad Max as in going around being a psycho and putting a bone through your nose. I mean, you know, these are normal people that have been pushed to extremes and have reacted by slaughtering anyone that they come across because they're just, hey, why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we? Who's going to stop us, you know? It allows us to look into that deeper part of the human psyche and just see what's in there, you know? It can act as a warning, but does not need to. What do I mean by that? Well, a warning can be about anything from social structures to scientific technologies that have gone awry and gone wrong, to a nuclear, you know, fission that's gone wrong. It can also mean, and I think it's the more interesting facts, it can also mean that you're holding a mirror up to people and saying, hey, you know, you're in this situation, what happens to you? That really lovely quote of, you know, when you stare into the abyss, you've got to be very careful because the abyss is staring back into you. And you never come away from that unchanged, sorry. You know, people in combat scenarios and things like that in war, they don't come back the same person. You know, so how would you react? Not everyone gets to be in that situation. And the post-apocalyptic setting allows you to be in that situation a lot more than you would, obviously, reading a book about a soldier. You know, you can't really identify with a soldier, but you can identify with somebody whose home's just been destroyed. You know, because you can look around your own home and imagine, oh my god, what would happen? You know, if my wife and kids were, you know, in danger, what would I do? Or if they were already dead, what would I do? Would I just kill myself? That's why writing in a fallen world is so provocative. Number 4, on a brighter note, it should show hope for the future. And I'm a big proponent of this. I hate one-note things. One-note book series that I read was, for instance, The Godless World. There was a series called The Godless World, which was so one-note and so dour and so miserable that I just gave up on it. 2 books into the 3-book series, I just didn't want to see how it ended. I wasn't bothered. It just depressed me. And then I looked up the keynotes of what happened later on, and it was just as depressing. So I was like, okay, yeah, not bothering with that. You know, a post-apocalyptic setting should offset its setting in being completely bleak and horrible by showing that there is hope. You know, there is a single bit of grass coming up through the sodden earth. Nature is reclaiming things. You know, the world will carry on and will get better. You know, that's very, very, very important to a post-apocalyptic setting. So number 5, it should show a dark and black humour. In this you find humanity. So whilst there should be people who react badly to the apocalypse, there should be people also who remain good people. And there should also be people who develop a black humour. Yeah? Human beings are amazing for going up against things like death and coming out the other side and taking it in their stride. Not all people can do that, but there should be people in your setting who just shrug their shoulders and go, well, that's where we are. And I've always said that if you find something adverse in life, there's a lot of power in laughing at it. There's a lot of power in taking its power away by finding it amusing and just shrugging your shoulders and getting on with it. And I think that's one of the most powerful things you can actually inject into your post-apocalyptic fiction, is to have your characters, through you, you know, say, hey, you know, things are bad, but screw it. I'm going to do it anyway. I'm going to live anyway. I'm going to go to that next town across. There might be somebody there who I can help, or something like that. You know, humanity is just as important as devastation in the fallen world, if not more so. Things to avoid. Okay, this is important. Probably the most important slide. So, make your apocalypse interesting. Make it stand out. I've said this about Cyberpunk as well. Cyberpunk is full of tropes, so is a post-apocalyptic setting. It's a theme that runs throughout all of these things that we're going to be doing. Make it stand out, make it different. Number one, avoid zombies if you can, please. I'm sick of it, you're sick of it, everyone's sick of it. The Last of Us found another way around this, in that they did a fungus that grows inside. It's a cordyceps that grows inside of bugs and takes them over and makes them zombies, so that they can walk to other ant hills and things and infect loads of ants with this cordyceps. And it jumps to humanity. That's really interesting, because then humans become like really rage-filled zombies, but at the end of the day, they're still very different. There's a difference to normal zombies. So if you're going to do zombies, think of something like that. Obviously, that idea has now been done, which is a big shame. But yeah, you've got to make sure that you think about these things. Do you really want to be making yet another zombie apocalypse when you can use your voice to say something completely unique? Probably not. Number 3, more for the games out there. Avoid Fallout. Its themes are well explored. By Fallout, I mean generally post-apocalyptic nuclear war. Especially if you're going to go into detail about it and describe how the nuclear war happened. As I say in the final point there, it's less relevant now. The propensity for nuclear war is nowhere near as much as it was. Nowhere near. In the early 90s and late 80s and things like that. It's now firmly in the rearview mirror. It could still happen, but very, very, very unlikely. It won't resonate with people like it used to. Yeah, it won't pull them in. And again, we're all kind of sick of it. It's happened so many times. We've explored it so many times. Nearly every single piece of fiction you can go out there can probably be explained. Post-apocalyptic fiction can normally be explained by nuclear fallout, which is, yeah, okay, but there are different kinds of apocalypse. Okay, make the event of your apocalypse interesting. Make it stand out. I'm going to give you some help. These are things to read to expand what an apocalypse should be. So The Road by Cormac McCarthy is one of my favourite books. It's very bleak. It's very, how do I put it? It's very relentless, which is why it's so short. In that book, the apocalypse is described once in detail, and it's still very, very, very vague and very, very horrific. And the way that the world's actually broken down, you can actually see the lines and the creases in the world where things have fallen apart, and it's just a fantastic way to describe what is going on in terms of post-apocalyptic breakdown. And it's very near after the post-apocalypse as well, so there aren't any societies that have risen up again or anything like that. Nothing. Metro 2033, for the games up there, you'll know exactly what that is. That is by Dmitry Glukhovsky. Metro 2033 takes place in the Moscow Metro after an apocalypse has happened. It's we think it was a nuclear apocalypse, but there are demons that roam the skies and stuff, so it's more of a pseudo, unholy nuclear apocalypse, and that there's still radiation outside, and you can't really breathe outside. But for the most part, you can actually go through the world and see for yourself what the hell's going on. Society underneath the ground is, has its own politics and has its own interlocking status quos. It's very, very interesting. It's almost like a social experiment as Metro 2033, in the way that it goes on about, there are still Nazis and communists and traders and everything that are underground in the Moscow Metro. Each station is basically on the Metro is a city in its own right, which I find really, really interesting. Sometimes it's a bit ham-fisted and over the top with its descriptions of politics and stuff, but still very, very, very interesting and a very good book to read if you're getting into post-apocalyptic fiction. And finally, Roadside Picnic by Arkady and Boris Strugatsky. So Roadside Picnic is essentially a very, very, very interesting post-apocalyptic setting in that an alien spaceship comes to Earth and crashes and leaves behind essentially the left behinds of what will be a roadside picnic. So aliens came down here, they visited, and then they left. And such things have created really weird physics anomalies and all sorts of things like that. And there are people called stalkers who go into the wastelands around this anomaly and try and get some of this really amazing space age technology and bring it back to our modern world, try and advance the actual status quo of what's going on. It is the basis of the inspiration for the game Stalker that came out later. It's about Chernobyl. But Roadside Picnic is a wonderful little jaunt, and very, very weird. And it's different as well. It's not like any other post-apocalyptic fiction that I've read. Some of these do cover nuclear war, but they're ambiguous about the end of the world. If you can then adopt a similar approach, have the apocalypse be an unnerving and vague event, Hitchcock's rule always applies. Hitchcock always said that true horror is in the human brain. There's nothing more scary than what the human brain can do to itself. So you show the effect of something that's happening to somebody, but you never show the monster. You never let them peer behind the curtain. And in doing that, you let the human brain do the rest. In my recent Dragon Age Origins playthrough, I said that about the broodmother, and that's never explicitly said that women are sexually abused to create broodmothers, but it's heavily implied, and they let your imagination do the rest. And that also gives them a little bit of wiggle room when they can say, well, it's not about sexual abuse at all, you know, that sort of thing. Well, it is, really. But always let the reader's mind do the rest. Give them just enough, and then pull back and let their brains do the rest. I don't need to know about what yield bombs were being dropped. I don't need to know about any of that. The apocalypse itself isn't the most important thing in your setting when in a post-apocalyptic future. The most important thing are the characters and the stories that are happening on this really cool post-apocalyptic backdrop. So as a little treat, I call it a treat, more of a enforced torture, I'm going to read you a little bit about my current apocalypse, the Driftwood. This has been going on for a few years now. It's pretty much finished, and this is a very, very vague rundown of what the hell is going on in the world. But just to show you how I've taken my own ideas and I've practiced what I preached and I put it into my own setting. So, the world is annihilated in the Driftwood, not Earth, so we're not talking about Earth, by a magical explosion. As such, magic is hated and feared. So there's a big empire that covered this entire world and even went to the stars, and it was a time of plenty, and everyone had anything they ever wanted and really advanced technology and all sorts. And then a magical explosion happens, humans reached too far, and most of the world is completely wiped out by this magical explosion. The Commonwealth, a steampunk-style society with some cyberpunk elements, sits in the north behind massive walls, a huge city of tens of millions of people. So this is a city that sits on a big freshwater lake, and essentially keeps everyone else out by the Iron Curtain, which is this huge wall that no one can really get past out in the Driftwood. Everywhere outside the Commonwealth to the south is known as the Driftwood. So the great wastelands that are racked by magical storms that shear flesh from the bone. So lightning in the Driftwood is purple and orange, and it's magical in nature. It warps and changes you. It causes weird things to start happening to the actual lands where they drop. All of the creatures in the Driftwood are heavily mutated by this changing energies of magic, and also human beings that are touched by it. Sometimes they develop magical powers. Sometimes the kids develop magical powers. It's completely random, but it tends to happen a lot more in the Driftwood than anywhere else. Dragons and other monstrosities stalk the Driftwood. The closer you get to ground zero of the apocalypse, the worse the monstrosities get. The worse the magical radiation, the more wondrous the treasures. So, sorry, I messed that up when I was writing it. So basically, the further south you travel into the epicenter of the explosion as it happened, the better the treasures you get. So the better, the more wondrous things from the past you can actually bring back to the Commonwealth for a king's ransom. But also, the weirder and nastier the monsters get, the worse the magical radiation gets, the worse the storms get that can flay the skin from your bones. There are some truly horrific monsters in the Driftwood. These are all from, dimensional monsters that pass through different dimensions. There are all different kind of tropes that I've used, like there are monsters that can only move when you're not looking at them, things like that. It's simply that there are the worst kind of monsters are normally the ones that can't move if you're looking at them, because if you look at them, then you are perceiving them in our world, and because they're from a different dimension, they can't really exist in our world, and so as soon as you perceive them, they just disappear again, or they freeze because they don't want to be seen. So yeah, truly terrifying stuff the further you go down towards the epicenter. The driftwood is filled with artifacts that fuel the Commonwealth's advancement. So every single advancement in the Commonwealth, even the cyberpunk ones, come from the driftwood. So agents pass through the wastes all the time looking to strike it rich. Towns and small cities dot its landscape. It's truly a magically infused frontier. So, not going to lie, the driftwood is an amalgamation of many different ideas. It is basically a Western / steampunk / cyberpunk / nuclear apocalypse setting. All these different elements all thrown in together. Magic users are said to have a thing called the bastard blood, and are haunted by the Church, a religious military company desperate to annihilate all those with the magical taint in their veins. Now, the Church is something that is supported by the Commonwealth, because the Commonwealth finds unshackled magic extremely, extremely dangerous. So the Church, which isn't a play on anyone's religion, the Church is just it's a religious fanatical group who want to protect everybody by either killing those who have magical talent or shutting them away where they can't harm anyone. Because the more people with magical talent, i.e. the bastard blood, make use of those talents, the further the things from beyond our dimension can creep and can get into wherever they're doing magical powers and things. Because magic doesn't actually come from our world, it comes from beyond. So, to the far south are the skeleton cities. I'm trying to think of a better name for that, but I haven't yet. Where the epicenter of the apocalypse is. This is ground zero. This is where the actual explosion happened. And they're called the skeleton cities because they literally are the skeletons of skyscrapers and huge adamant towers that stretch into the sky. They stand there. So if you look down from in the driftwood, at the far southern horizon, you can always see the skeleton cities. They go on for what seems like forever. This is where the greatest treasures of the past are located. And this used to be a spacefaring society, so this used to be a society that used to be able to get into space, now it can't. This is also where the worst of the nightmarish monsters roam from beyond our dimension. So the worst, the most powerful monsters all live near to the epicenter. They all live near to this, or inside the skeleton cities. But if you want the big paydays, you want the biggest paydays as wanderers in this post-apocalyptic setting, that's where you gotta go, baby. And that's how the bad things get. So I think I love it. I love the driftwood. Like I think, and that's not just because I made it, because I love writing about it, and I love playing in it. We do role-playing campaigns in it, and all sorts. It's fantastic. And one thing I really like about it is the way that it infuses so many different ideas and makes them the driftwood makes it its own sort of a thing. You can never really put your finger on, and I've made that specific. You can't really put your finger on something and go, that's from Fallout, or that's from X-Men, or that's from, because I've made the setting, hopefully, to a point where they're so enmeshed together that you can't really pick things out. Yeah? Eventually I will do a full video on the driftwood and all the settings that I've made. But I just wanted to give you some sort of a look into how I'm putting the ideas that I put in this video into practice. And so this is what I created. Okay? Go ahead and try it yourself, because post-apocalyptic settings are awesome. Stay away from zombies, stay away from things that, unless you can make them your own, stay away from them. Do something completely original. Yeah, always remember the rules that we went through in the session. And hopefully, next time you come to write something that's post-apocalyptic, you can even inject some post-apocalyptic into your cyberpunk settings and things like that. Hopefully next time you come to write something like that, you can go in with a bit of a better idea, and that's what these videos are for, just to help you out, to make sure that when you come to actually write your own fiction, maybe you can do so with a bit more of a pat on the back and a bit more confidence. That's it. That was my apocalypse. Now, let's see what yours is like. I'll see you later.